Hello there, this is a video accompanying the Joomla tutorial series developing an MVC component, and in this step we're looking at adding tags. As it says here, tags was developed on top of the unified content model within Joomla. And this idea, as far as I can understand it, was to hold all of the data which is common to various things like articles or menus or banners or contacts, whatever, in a common table. And this common table was UCM content. And the tags functionality, and maybe to a slightly lesser extent, the common history functionality, has been built on top of this UCM. And so if we look at what is going on, I've updated some of the diagrams I used when I was describing content history. With tags, what we're doing is we're taking our Hello World information, which is in our Hello World record, and we're copying the key or the important, or really not so much the important, but the fields in that record which are common to other sorts of content on Joomla, common to articles or whatever, and we're putting it in this UCM content table. And if you have a look, for example, in PHP MyAdmin, you can look and see what is in this UCM content table. And you have things like alias, title, alias is here, title, body, which really reflects the description, status or state, checked out. So a lot of these fields we've come across before in our development of the Hello World tutorials, and they're also present in things like articles. So as I said, the idea was to have all of these common fields in a common table, rather than each record or each table, like Hello World or content or whatever, having their own common fields there. And then there would be special fields which would be particular to that type of content, and they would be held elsewhere. So as far as I understand it, that was the whole basis behind this unified content model, but it's only really been implemented for content history, and we're looking at this step at tags, and as far as I can see, it's got an uncertain future. So if we look back at this table, we had a similar picture here to do with versioning and the content history. And here we've got the same sort of thing where our table class is writing data to the Hello World table, and it is also emitting events. And in this case, we're looking at 3 events: on, before, store, on, after, store, on, before, delete. And these are picked up by this functionality here, which is kind of like subscribing to those events or observing those events. And it's this functionality here which sets up these database records here associated with tags. So it's doing a number of things. First of all, it's copying the fields from the Hello World table, and from this Hello World record, or this Hello World data in this class instance here, and it's copying them to UCM content, and it works out how to copy them from one to the other by using our mapping. So here we have got our mapping, field mappings. So this is basically saying, if you want to fill in core title within this UCM content here, record here, what you need to do is you need to pick that off our greeting field, and similarly for the other fields that we've decided to map there. And then there's also a set of special fields. In this case, I haven't put any in, but they're saying that for special fields, here we have it for the category records, These are fields which don't fit into this common field, and they're held elsewhere. They're held in this table here. So that's the idea behind these field mappings. And this functionality here is using that configuration data, which is stored in the content types data there. And it's using it to work out how to go from the table structure up here into creating these UCM content. UCM base seems to be just an abridged version of UCM content. We'll have a look at that in a minute. But then the tags functionality is kind of built on top of this, because if we go back to the diagram here, we have kind of like a many-to-many relationship between content items and tags. And we resolve that many-to-many relationship by means of this content item tag map table. So the functionality here is writing the UCM content record, which it gets from our record here, and using the mappings. It's also writing any tags, because we can use this mechanism here to define tags on the fly. And it's also writing this content item tag map, the records in that, to really link the tags to the content records that they're associated with. So if we have a look at that in a bit more detail, here is the way it's kind of reflected in my instance here. I've got a Hello World table, and there's a couple of records in it. Hello World is the greeting, its ID is 160. And I've got also Goodbye World, and its ID is 41. And that then is kind of like a key to that is present in the UCM base and UCM content record here. It's got a UCM item ID of 160, and it's got here UCM or core content item ID of 160, which is referring back to the ID. Also in the UCM content field, it's got the greeting, which has been mapped to core title based on that mapping data that we gave it. It's also got, from the content types record, we have got a type ID of 16, which was just the next ID which was given when I entered this record in. com.helloworld.helloworld is the type alias, and you can see this type ID is reflected down into the UCM base table here and into the UCM content table here. And it's also got a core content ID, which really is just the next free primary key in this table. But you can see these things here reflect back into the Hello World table. These here reflect back into the content types table. And then we've got a couple of tags. We've got a tag called greeting and a tag called tutorial. So against our Hello World message here, I've got a tag of greeting and a tag of tutorial. And if I search here and click on Goodbye World, you should see the same two tags, greeting here and tutorial. And those IDs turn out to be 11 and 12. And this is our content item tag map table and the records in it. And you can see it's just implementing that many-to-many relationship. You can see that our ID 160 comes down to here. 22160 reflects on that Hello World greeting there. And it's got a tag ID of 11, which is a tag of greeting, and it's also got a tag ID of 12, which is a tag of tutorial. And the same is true for 2841, which reflects back to our goodbye world, and the same two tags. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the database structure that is actually built in here based on really the content types data here, and particularly the mapping code, which takes the mapping from our table here and maps it to the UCM content record there. If we go down in our code, you can obviously see in our uninstall we need to kind of remove any records that we've created there. But the next thing I want to cover was this line here, where we've got the JTable observer here. Now, in our previous step in versioning, we set up the kind of publish subscribe mechanism by using this here, add observer class to class, and we had a diagram, here it is, where this initial call of JObserver add class to class set up this table, and then when we got our constructor over here and we called JObserver attach all observers from here, it went through that table and set up the observers, as you can see by these green lines here, into this table here. And then whenever there were events emitted, it came down here, picked up the observers from that table and called the various functions on them. So in this case here, we're not calling this function, but we're calling a different mechanism, which I think I mentioned in the previous video, which other content types within Joomla use, and they use this functionality here, JTable observer tags create observer. So they're not going through here, but instead what they're doing is, if we look at this, this is our hello world table instance, and inside that instance we have got our constructor, which is a constructor which is here in the code. And the first thing that we do is we call this parent constructor, which comes down here, and this is where we come into our previous code. So we set up our new JObserver updater, which is this blue instance here, and then we call attach all observers, which comes into this static call here. But what we find is that there's no observers that we've actually caused to be present in that table, so it just stops there. And the next thing that we do is we call this JTable observer tags create observer, and we pass this, which is this blue object here. So it's coming over here. Here's our create observer, and there's our reference back to this blue instance here, $s. We call this constructor, and we go back here, and this really reflects the second half of this green line here. So we're doing the same thing exactly as we did before, except rather than it coming through this route to call create observer, we're calling create observer over here. And then the same thing happens with store. It calls on this observers, which, as you can see from up here, is this blue instance here. It calls this update function here, passes the event and any parameters. This looks through this table to find the observers of this class and calls the function. And here it is, in here is all this functionality which sits in here, which interacts with the table. You can see again we've got a reference here to reflect back to this instance here, so we store a reference to that. So we've access down here to that instance and all of the methods available in JTable, and it's picking off the data there, using the mapping data, creating all of these UCM content and base records and the tags and the content tag map. So doing a fair amount of code down there. So that's that. That's kind of what's happening underneath. If we go on down the code, we see that we're adding in form. And if we go back here, there's just a few things which, when I was developing this step, I thought these are things you have to be careful about. And the first thing was about the configuration data in the content types. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and go back to our content types, and it loads. And this is our mapping here. Go up here. This is our field mappings column. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to change that to an equal sign there from what it usually is, a colon, and just save that, and then go back into Hello World. I'm going to click on Hello World. And I'm just going to add another tag A here. Save and close. And you can see up here, it's come back with an error message. Saved failed with the following error, but there's nothing there. And if you make kind of like a mistake down in this area, that is what you find. You find some message like that, which is indicating that you've got something wrong, but it's not really giving you an idea about where it is. The reason for this is that this error is occurring way down in our UCM base, UCM content tables, but the error that's being reported at this level is up here. So it's looking at this stage for an error associated with this table, and it's not finding any, and any problems down here aren't actually reported. So if you're trying something and you find something like that, it's as well checking your configuration data in that content types table, because that could well be the problem that you're facing. The second thing then is published state. Now, it explains a little bit in the code about the fact that we also need to have a status field which we set to 1 by default, and the reason for that is our published field is a default of 1, so that Hello World records by default get a status of published. So if in previous steps we haven't had a published field whenever we've clicked on this, and it means that it gets written to the database just as its default, and its default, if we go back to our description up here, is set to 1. However, the default equivalent record in UCM content is set to 0, and it does mean that your Hello World records and your UCM content records are going to be out of step, and some functionality which kind of draws those records out and displays them, like for example if you're using some of these tags library codes to display information about tags, it's not going to pick up those UCM content records because they're not published. So you just have to be careful whenever you're defining the field mappings. It's not just as straightforward as saying, well, this field maps to that. You have to think about the values as well. And in this case, the published one was causing us a problem but you could find other fields that if you were developing another component kind of fitted with some of those common fields, but you were actually defining different data items in them, and that would give you problems to whenever you came to run it. So in this case, what we've done here is we've added in this status field, set it to default by published, but I can actually change it there. Tags, menu items. Okay, so if we go back to our admin, and here's our menu items. If we click on a new menu item, and click on select, and go down to tags, you see there are the three types of menu items that can be set up on the front end associated with tags. And I've put those onto the front end, and here they are, these three. So list of all tags just kind of lists all of the tags that are on the system. Compact list of tag items for greeting tag. So here in a compact list, it prompts you whenever you're setting up here, it prompts you which one do you want to use. I've used this tag item for greeting. So it's showing you the records which have the greeting tag associated with them. And it's also putting out the modified date. So you will find that some of the functionality uses not just the title and IDs, but it will pick off other columns from the UCM content table, and here it's picking off the modified date. Now, we haven't actually got a modified date, but if it finds a blank modified date, it will use our creation date. So in our mapping here, we have actually set up the mapping created time into created. So what it's doing is it's picking up the modified date, the date that I created those. So you just have to be aware as well that it's using other fields from this UCM content table and Joomla functionality, and you may think as well there are other extensions out there which kind of build on top of the Joomla tags functionality, which are going to be using other fields from the UCM content table. So you need to be thinking about that whenever you're deciding which fields should be mapped into the content table. Here's the tagged items, and here we've got goodbye world, and what it's got here is the description. So it's using also the description field from the UCM content as well. And we have got core body, which is the UCM field, and we have mapped our description to that. You see also that it's got links here, so it needs to build up kind of like a root. It's going to be calling the underscore function of jroot to build that up, and that's where our routing function comes in as well, that we have implemented in the code. And the other thing I was going to talk about was the Joomla core code. They do have, there is a reference to this page using the tags in an extension. If you look down through there, the code is a bit different from the tutorial code. And in particular, whenever we look at the get item method, if we look at the tutorial code here, we've got, here we have here, we get an instance of the tags helper, and then on that instance we call get tag IDs, and we return that back and we store that in the item tags. And if you look at the code here, it is a bit different. We call item tags and set that to be equal to the new instance. And then on that instance, we call get tag IDs. But notice we're not actually returning anything. So how does that work? And this is how it actually is written within the core article. For example, if you look at article here, we've got item tags equal to the JHelper tags, a new instance there, and then we call the get tags ID, get tag IDs function from that instance. So what's going on here? Well, if you look at the tags helper, here's our get tag IDs, and it sets up the query and then runs the query doing load column, sets this tags is equal to that there, and returns this tags. So what it's doing here is, this obviously refers to this instance, it's setting up a property called tags, which is basically the same as what it's returning back there. So what you have here, if you look back at the code, we've got items tag is this JHelper tags, and then it's set another property of this. So we've got $items tags. Tags is really the data here. So it's maybe a bit easier to see. I've got it set up in Eclipse, and if I click on this tagged article, we are hopefully running this. It stopped. It stopped. Let me try running this again. Components, content, articles. And it should come back to that page showing all of the articles. And I'm going to click on tagged article there. So clicking on that tagged article is going to go into functionality which is editing this, and that editing functionality is going to build the form which allows it to edit it, and it's going to pre-populate that field, the tags field, with the existing field. So it's going to go through this functionality, this model code, which, as we saw in here, this is the article model, is getting the tags via this mechanism. So if we go back to Eclipse and we just look at where we are, we're in content model article get item. So this is where we are. We're just about to get the tag IDs there, and we'll step over that. And we now look at item. Go to item. So here in our item, we've got all of the items associated with that content item, with that article, ID, images, all these sorts of things. But if you look at tags, we have got, as the value there, we have got JHelper tags. And then if we expand that down, this is where we have the tags data and set to 5. And you may be wondering, well, where is that then fixed up? Because everything else is just a value. And it's actually fixed up in this code here. which is our tag field. So this is the functionality which outputs the tag field on our form. And one of the things it's doing here is getting the input. So it's basically wanting to generate the HTML input associated with that tag field. And it's going to pre-populate it by setting the value. And you can see in this tag field PHP, this is what it's got here. If the value is an instance of tags helper, then it's getting the tags. And as we come down here, we've got, this is referring to a lot of the stuff associated with that HTML input tag. And if we come down to value, we can see here that it's that JHelper tags. So it's down, way down there, that it's actually using the fact that it's JHelper tags and actually getting the tags. So that's just in case you were wondering how that was all working. In my opinion, not very pretty. Okay, just finally, just a few suggestions of what you might like to try. You might like to try setting the tags against the items. So I'll just load this in here. So display the tags set against the Hello World records in the Hello Worlds view. So if we go back to here, this should be finishing, and then we can come into our Hello World view. And what I've done is I've changed the associations and I've just put tags in that field. So if I refresh that, they should appear then in that field. The second thing is you can change your search tools and add in a tag there, field there, which allows you to select the tag. I'll set tutorial, and then it will show the records that have that tag. So that's the second thing. The third thing is you might want to define a config parameter to control whether or not the tags should be displayed on the front end. Here we have the front end, and if we click on Hello World, we have got these tags displayed. You can set that up to be optional. By the way, here is the kind of like new Hello World record form updated. So you can see here that it's got the ability to select tags. And if I hold down the control key, I can select a number of tags. But it doesn't have any ability to create new tags on the fly, like in the way that you would have in a Hello World record. So, and that really is reflected by the difference between the nested and Ajax forms of this tags field that you have here. So that's the third thing you might want to try. And the fourth thing is the tutorial code doesn't have the language copied into UCM content. You might want to try that and confirm that all of the tag language specific functionality works okay. Okay, that's about it for this step. Many thanks for listening. Bye.